Hello everyone. Shall we begin, Denisa? Okay.
Sure.
Hello everyone, and it is a pleasure to have you all here. So, welcome to today's event. We are really excited to have you all here. This session is all about exploring the fascinating world of longevity and aging. This is a topic that holds so much promise, not just the healthy lifespan that we have, but how we can extend the years that we live. Okay, so we'll talk about why it matters and what's happening in this field and how each of us on an individual level can contribute to it. Okay, I'll firstly start about um, how this community built. Okay, so Life Extension built is a community that we've built to connect people who are curious about the field, to make it more accessible and create opportunities for collaboration and learning. We believe longevity research isn't about just living longer, it's about living better and healthier lives. And events like these are a way for us to grow as a community together and help more people understand the potential of this field. To explain more about what we do, I'd like to call upon Ishika to continue.
Thanks, Hailey. Hi everyone, I'm Ashika and I'm really excited to tell you a bit about our community, Life Extension, and how it all started. It began when some of us connected on LinkedIn and others on Telegram. We were all curious about the field of longevity and wanted to learn and talk more about it. So we created a WhatsApp group where we could share research, discuss ideas, and have meaningful conversations about this fascinating topic. Over time, we realized we could take this beyond just casual chats and turn it into something bigger, a proper community where people like us with a passion for longevity could connect and collaborate. Let me also introduce the team behind Life Extension. Saili, Mrinmay, and I are in the final year of our masters in biotechnology, so we bring a lot of scientific enthusiasm to the group. Ajinkya, who is in his final year of BTech, is exploring how machine learning can intersect with biology. And Yash, a third year BTech student, is passionate about bringing together people from different fields to work on something meaningful. Our goal with Life Extension is to build a strong community where people from all kinds of backgrounds can come together to discuss, collaborate, and create real impact in the field of aging and longevity. We want this to be a space where ideas flow freely, connections are built, and exciting opportunities emerge. This event is just the beginning of what we hope will be a much bigger journey. We are thrilled to have you all here with us tonight, and we can't wait to see what we can achieve together.
Thank you, Ishika. So, now let's move on to the highlight of today's event, our special guest, the speaker, Denisa. So, to introduce her, I'll pass it over to Ajinkya.
Hello, guys. I'm Ajinkya, and I'm going to give a brief introduction about Denisa. Denisa is a passionate explorer in longevity biotech with a strong interdisciplinary background in biology, mathematics, and coding. She is committed to advancing health span and lifespan through innovative projects and collaborations. She is also co-founder of Longevity Explorers, and she is also an advisor at Apollo Health Venture. Her work integrates technology, storytelling, and cross-sector partnerships to create meaningful impact. She was also a participant of Longevity Biotech Fellowship. Denisa actively engages with various communities to foster collaboration and innovation in the field. Her mission is to explore and implement technologies that improve human health and well-being globally. And for further details, you can just visit her LinkedIn profile. Denisa, you can take. Denisa, you can continue.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro. I super appreciate the community that you guys are building, and then thanks everybody for being here because I'm always super excited to meet people from all over the world who are interested in this topic. But in India, I feel like there's this special opportunity that I was talking to these people about, and I was like, yeah, there's just so much out there happening that I want the world to be knowing about. And there are so many populations that are underrepresented in our quest for increasing human health span and lifespan, that it's absolutely great to meet new people with whom I otherwise wouldn't have contact with. So definitely, whenever you want to reach out to me during this call, just leave any sorts of questions in the chat, or raise your hand. And otherwise, you're gonna find my LinkedIn and can feel free to reach out to me with questions. So yeah, overall, I think I can talk a bit about how I've gotten where I am, and you guys can know, beyond the text introduction, like, who am I actually? And on top of that, why do I think the longevity matters, and how to make a contribution in the space if you feel like this is the right place for you to be in. And again, at any given time point, just stop me, ask questions. I generally don't mind, or just leave questions in the chat, and take it from there. So although I don't have slides prepared for today, I do hope that that you guys are going. I mean, I hope that I'm going to be entertaining enough for everybody in this audience to listen to. And I'm going to start with, why do I actually do longevity at the moment, and what does that mean for me personally? Because I feel like it's something super important for everybody in a certain space to reflect upon. Like, why am I choosing this path over the infinite possibilities out there regarding what I could be working on, and can be, seemingly more important, or could be making me more money, or could be getting me somewhere else. And in my case, why I do longevity is just scientific curiosity. I'm just super excited about learning how can we transcend biological limitations. I I used to study math and computer science, as Ajinka briefly mentioned, and while I was doing that, I felt like I was not necessarily solving the biggest problems that I could be working on, and eventually ended up stumbling across this transhumanist readings, that were basically talking about how we can improve humanity from a biological standpoint. And people were covering stuff like chip implants, or people who wanted to see all colors and all the radiations beyond the light spectrum, and just all these sorts of really futuristic, really visionary stuff that I didn't quite believe in at the time. But longevity struck me as something that is also super useful and practical, and already gets to that limit of possibility that I'm super interested in. Like, how far can we actually go with our human body? How much can we actually change it? So went on to study biochemistry, cell biology, graduated from an undergrad in Germany, then started a master in Zurich at ETH Zurich on computational biology. But I ended up dropping out of that master to pursue my dream in venture capital in longevity biotech. So that's what I'm doing right now. 2 years ago, I also co-founded this nonprofit that basically helps people get started in longevity. Although, not everybody here, I bet, has a background in bio. And that's completely fine. I didn't have a background in bio, and I'm definitely not necessarily recommending people to shape their lives the way I did around one path. So what we do at Longevity Explorers is we're trying to get people going on this space on longevity, regardless of what they've studied before, what they're doing right now, through like courses and fellowships and other stuff. But I feel like that's enough about me, and I should get started about why longevity. And when I talk about longevity, for me personally, it's not as much in terms of what we can do right now, but more what can we do to long term live, um, to ages that we never thought before we can live up to. But definitely longevity, this is this whole spectrum that starts from people who just want to live better right now. And for this, we have diets, we have specific exercise routines, we have better sleep methods like supplements, and all these sorts of stuff that we can do right now. And this is one end of the spectrum, stuff that like Huberman or Peter Attia are talking about. And then to the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are trying to radically enhance lifespan. And these kinds of people are developing drugs against aging, but more more strikingly, said there are some other methods like cryopreservation, freezing yourself in the way that you see in movies, or replacing organs, or basically doing a whole body replacement for rejuvenation. So depending on why you care about longevity, you could be a either end of the spectrum or somewhere in between. And I think that the core of why this matters is that we're all aging, regardless of where you come from. I will assume that most of the population here is from India. Everybody ages, and it's just a given fact of life. And for most people, it also stays as such, and it's not believed to be something we can change. But biologically speaking, it's probably something we can try to tackle and succeed in the battle against in the next couple of decades. So one of the most striking facts for me was that out of the 10 leading causes of death, 8 of them are related to aging. We have stuff like cardiovascular diseases and cancer, and those just don't just happen. Aging is a continuous process over decades. The way I define aging, or at least the way that I think about it, is that we have these cells and tissues and organs and like the whole body, and at every single level something goes wrong with time. Just so many changes keep happening that they become detrimental to a bodily homeostasis. So in theory, what happens is that, let's take the cell for example, which is like the most basic unit of what a human body is. We're gonna have stuff like proteins inside it, or inside the nucleus we have the DNA, and the DNA is packaged in specific ways. Or probably everybody heard about the mitochondria. Like it's impossible not to have heard at least about the memes of what mitochondria does, which is produce cellular energy. And with time, so many things go wrong in all of these components. Our DNA gets mutations, and the way that it's packaged and chemically tagged gets altered. And then mitochondria start producing toxic reactive oxygen species. And we have all these proteins unfolding and forming aggregates and so forth. So, on the molecular level, we have all of these clues of what aging is. We put them under the form of, let's say, the hallmarks of aging, which I feel like is the most popular framework of how to think about aging on a molecular level. There are also other frameworks like the SENSE framework, that you can definitely check out on the internet in terms of what aging is. But the core of aging is all of this stuff is happening constantly. And as we age, we lose our capacity for homeostasis, like our capacity to restore ourselves to the baseline and to the most optimal state that we can be in. And for me, the purpose of the longevity space is just how do we get ourselves to live longer, if not indefinitely, in that homeostasis state of, everything works perfectly, or when something goes wrong, we can repair it or regenerate it. So yeah, I guess that this was the kind of brief intro to what's longevity, what's aging for me that I wanted to go into. Um, so I would love a bit of guidance from you guys. What do you want me to talk more about? Is it, for example, startups in the space? Is it where do we get funding from this? Is it regulations, science, community? I do love talking about community and longevity. Just yeah, if you can drop some ideas, or just you can probably use the chat so we don't all talk or whatever. I would love some ideas about, yeah, what do you guys want me to talk about? I'm super happy to cover anything. Just I'm need to do the disclaimer of I'm not too knowledgeable about the lifestyle component of things. I'm myself not the healthiest person that I know of, for sure, by far. But definitely happy to tackle the science or the startup side of things.
So, can you talk more about the startup planning and everything that goes in?
Yeah, yeah. So I can definitely talk a bit about I guess the types of startups. It sounds that I would start from, like, what does a longevity startup look like? And I have this mental categorization. There are definitely multiple frameworks to think about longevity startups, but the way I categorize them is you can either slow down aging, pause aging, or reverse aging. And there are also like an underlying category about like tools or digital health apps, or I don't know, biological aging clocks or longevity clinics, all those things that don't necessarily, you know, affect the process of aging itself, but help you in the process of doing so. Or are, you know, the lifestyle startups that I mentioned, stuff like supplements. So I would say I would probably go for each one of this category. In terms of slowing down aging, one strategy would be, you know, when you have your cells, you either rejuvenate them or you replenish them, because with age you start losing a bunch of cells. And basically, cell rejuvenation or repair can be done with like drugs or therapies, and at the same time, you have stem cell therapies that help with, you know, cellular replenishing. Or in the second category of pausing aging, you would have cryopreservation, because basically all your clocks stop at the moment that you're frozen. And then the hypothesis would be that as time passes, technology advances, we're able to bring you back to life after you're, you know, dead and cryopreserved. And obviously, you would not come back to life with your old body. Like nobody would want to come back as their 70-year-old self. There would be no point in just, you know, coming back 200 years later with the same age body. The whole point would be that in the meantime, some cellular, you know, reverse age reversal technology exists. So then you can come back as a rejuvenated self. And the third category of startups are those who are trying to reverse aging. So to go from an old biological age to a young biological age. And there are probably two categories of startups that I can subcategories that I can think about. One of them is replacement, which is probably the hottest category in longevity at this given time point, longevity biotech, which is create like my biomanufacturing organs or tissues or a whole human body and transplanting that into the old body. For whole body replacement, what it basically means is more so having a whole new body. But again, we're getting here into the basically much more futuristic side of longevity biotech, which I don't know if you guys want me to go into. But something else that's super popular is epigenetic reprogramming, what Altos Labs, that was funded by Jeff Bezos, is doing, and a bunch of other amazing startups like New Limit. What they're doing is basically trying to find a way to reverse cellular age, because at the moment we know that we can go from an old cell to an embryonic stem cell state. Sorry. But the whole idea is that with a specific cocktail of drugs that got the Nobel Prize in 2012 called the Yamanaka factors, you can basically go from an old state to a young state, to an embryonic state. But the big question in longevity right now is, instead of going all the way to the very beginning of a cell's life when it comes from an embryo, can we stop somewhere in the middle when the cell still has an identity, so we don't turn, I don't know, let's say a skin cell into an embryonic stem cell, but we just turn an old skin cell into a young skin cell? And can we do that for the whole body? That obviously is not like a comprehensive method for longevity biotech, in terms of you may be able to rejuvenate cells, but you still lose a bunch of cells as you age, for example, in your thymus. Or, you know, there are just no very specific method of tackling aging in a comprehensive manner to tackle all those hallmarks that I talked about previously. So yeah, these would be the three categories of startups that I categorize as longevity biotech, beyond clinics, lifestyle, and so forth. Um, okay, I can. Should I also um, read the questions myself from the chat? I guess that you want me to. Okay, so the first question is, what are the challenges you face in transitioning from a math background to bio, particularly in grasping complex concept related to longevity, and also talk about the cool tech involved in this topic? Um, that's a really great question, because I assume that a lot more people are in this position than we hear being talked about. I think that for me, transitioning from math to bio was arguably a better decision than going the other way around. I feel like having a math background or anything that's more analytical puts you in a very special place in terms of you can more easily find patterns and you can think outside the box in ways that biologists do not. This is why I value so much interdisciplinarity, because you can actually come with one framework of mind and then apply it to a completely new field and see new things that the biologists would have otherwise missed. But there are obviously lots of challenges in terms of biology is hard because it's so unpredictable. And when we talk about longevity biotech, it's so hard because it's so slow. You just it takes so many years to actually see something happen in a human. Even if you look at animal models, it takes so much time that I feel like my impatience by doing coding, you can so easily debug when you do something wrong. Doing math, you can just go back through your logic and see where stuff went wrong. In biology, you can't do that. I'm so frustrated because of that most of the time when I'm doing wet lab. So what I would say is it's hard to get used to how slow bio is, and how many things go wrong without you being able to tell what exactly went wrong. Definitely, that's a lot of reshaping how you think about life and how you think about approaching science. And then, in terms of the cool tech involved in longevity, well, I guess it is so subjective, like what's considered cool tech. Something that I think that people like Ajinka and other people here who are combining the analytical standpoint with the bio standpoint, are basically AI applications in drug discovery. I feel like this is something that a lot more people should be doing, which is creating new technologies to study biology, or just basically there are so many things happening in biology that if we could predict, they would be so helpful in just shortening the biotech timelines and us being able to properly understand how cellular biology works, because again, we don't have a good idea of how the human body works. And especially if you go down to something as complex and crowded and unpredictable as a cell, it becomes so tough that, if more people here have a background in machine learning or math and whatever, I would be even more considerate of a space like longevity or bio in general. So I hope that I serve as a motivation for you can definitely do it with just reading some papers and learning a bit of bio, but it would be so valuable to have your help in the space. Okay, I'm gonna drink some water first. In terms of how someone can make a career in longevity and aging and challenges during research, I would say there's no defined path in longevity to make a career out of it. And that's both a pro and a con. It's a pro because you can do you can just choose your path through it. Some things I recommend are attending fellowships, like the longevity biotech fellowship that I did. But there are so many things out there that people you could talk to actually just ask them, how did you get into the space, or just because the space is so early on, like you guys are so early on in the birth of the longevity biotech space, that people are so open to helping and so open to sharing their knowledge, sharing the opportunities that I know about, that I feel like it's actually an easier time than it would be, 10 years from now to enter the space and find your little corner within it. But the con of this is, yeah, nobody's going to tell you what to do exactly because there's no predefined path. But again, any help is useful and needed. If in the beginning when I got in longevity, I felt like nobody would want what I know. Like, why would somebody hire a person who knows absolutely no bio, but has a background in math? And this is why I changed careers. But I realized over time that it was the wrong approach, the wrong, I think, more so like mindset, because longevity biotech just requires so much interdisciplinary help. Like, we need people from the tech side to help us do the research. Then we need people from the legal side to help us get for regulations. We need people who do community, like the people doing the event today, because otherwise, how would we learn about all the things that all of us are doing? So basically whatever you're doing, adding sprinkling a bit of longevity biotech on top of that and talking to a bunch of people basically will do the job of getting you into the field. It's really early on, in my opinion. And in terms of challenges for research, I mentioned the fact that biology is so slow, and it gets even tougher that aging is hard to measure. Like how do you, it's easy to say I know an old organism when I see it, but how do you measure, let's say, the effect of an intervention that you're developing, the effect of a drug, and you're testing it on multiple organisms? How do you know how to measure very precisely the age of that organism, be it mice or flies or worms or whatever you're choosing? There are a bunch of other bottlenecks in research regarding, how beyond how to measure, just how do you develop the drugs that are just normal biotech problems. We don't escape from the problem of delivering drugs, delivering proteins or whatever. Definitely there are all the bumps in the road that biotech sees. I would say that research funding is definitely also a huge problem, whether we talk about research or startups. It's more challenging to convince somebody that aging is something worth working on compared to, say, cancer, that such a high percentage of population dies of, which is very ironic because cancer is a byproduct of aging. Not all types of cancer, but definitely the age-related ones. Because come on, how many people do we see around us at 20 years old they have cancer versus 50 or 60? The difference is still striking, and that goes on with so many other age-related diseases, obviously, that get funding to be solved individually. But it's so hard to actually convince governments or individual funders to give you money for something like aging. Um, then I'm also going to go to the next question, which is
Uh,
about, unless you want to
sorry
stop
to
me.
yeah, sorry to interrupt, Denisa. I'll read you the question. You can answer them.
Sure.
Yeah. So the third question is, what ethical dilemmas arise when trying to significantly extend human life? For example, could this lead to generational imbalances in opportunities and resources?
Yeah, I do love the ethical discussions of things. Um, is I feel like many people just go into the longevity space without thinking about how will the world look like once we solve this problem. A lot of people are too focused on the problem itself that they forget that we are going to be living through that world that we're creating, which kind of is actually a lot more motivational. Like you're creating the future, so you want to create a good future for everybody to live in, including yourself. And in terms of ethical dilemmas, definitely, I think that I'm just gonna name a few of the most common ones um that I hear about, which is, what about overpopulation? Then what if we're gonna have this sort of mentality stagnation in terms of, if we don't have a constant inflow of new, young people, we're going to be stuck in old mentalities. Some people are afraid of immortal dictators, or just, yeah, people who use basically the immortality in wrong terms. And then, yeah, obviously, as you talk about like opportunities and resources, there are definitely, there are going to be a lot of concerns regarding how do we treat the young versus the old. How do we treat like their different experiences? Like, are we going to discriminate them for being too old, they having had like 200 years more than us, or are we going to discriminate the new people are raising? But I would say that all of these problems are really debatable. There are definitely arguments all over the internet for and against all of these, and I mean, I could go for each one of these and talk about their pros and cons, but I'm not entirely sure that that's something I should be doing now.
Okay. So the next question is from Agnish Roy. So you've mentioned about, instead of transitioning back from the old stage to an embryonic stage of a cell, maybe we can stop somewhere in the middle where it has a specific recognition like an embryonic skin cell. Could you elaborate a bit on this? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So I can. go back to the core idea of this process called epigenetic reprogramming. Actually, the processes that I'm talking about not going the full way is called partial reprogramming. So I would take the case of a skin cell just arbitrarily. That could be any other type of cell. The idea is that in 2012, these Yamanaka factors were discovered. Yamanaka factors are basically just this set of transcription factors that, when activated, they revert the age of an old cell. Again, in this case, let's say an old skin cell to an embryonic cell. And the thing is that we don't want that to happen to our cells everywhere in our body, because then we would just turn into a big blob of embryonic cells. Embryonic cells are not really known to have particular functions. That's the whole point, that it can develop into any other form of specialized cells. So the point would be, instead of going all the way to this, baby state of the cell, to stop somewhere at a given point where the cell is young enough to still perform if its function properly. Like, you still want a skin cell to do what a skin cell has to do and secrete its specific elements, but then you don't want the skin cell to sorry, to basically, yeah, lose its function, but you don't want it to be old, because you want, that's the whole point of eradicating aging, is that you don't want to deal with all the toxic stuff that it gets created in your cell, and all the aggregates that form with your cells once aging happens. So what these companies are doing is basically looking for the right transcription factors, or other proteins to be activated in order to revert that age only partially. So if we could be doing that and delivering those transcription factors to, all our cells, for specific time periods, and in specific quantities, which, again, it's a lot of specificity involved, then in theory, yeah, we could have um, a younger body from a biological standpoint.
Thank you. So, the next question is from Karthik. So, what advancements in longevity could there be unintended consequences such as overpopulation or increased inequality? How do we address these issues?
Okay, yeah. So going back to the topic of like overpopulation, I guess the problem with talking about overpopulation is that this may sound like a hot take, but actually has some scientific backing. It's just that we should not be afraid necessarily of overpopulation, but under underpopulation, in terms of the fertility crisis that we're dealing with. We're really going under the no specific number of kids that we should have to preserve the current population, which is like 2 kids per family, if I'm not wrong. Many countries are already going way beyond below that. So overpopulation should probably not be a problem in the next hundreds of years. We're decreasing in numbers much faster than most people think. And then in terms of increased inequality, I said it is definitely something that we need to be working on, because we do not, our current structures, our current societal structures are not made to account for us living more than 70 years. So everything that we have now, from the healthcare system to, the social system, is just built around the fact that we're going to have this quick turnover of 70 years, probably less, of just being replaced constantly. And we should be thinking about how to restructure the justice system, like, how do we think about a life sentence, for example, when people are going to live up to, I'm just making up a number, like 500 years. Then how are we going to think about the pension systems? How are we going to think about, like, retirement? Are we going to retire once we get to a health span of 200 years? Like, let's say we're healthy. Uh, the same way that we are healthy at 20, we're going to be as healthy at the age of 150 or 200. How do we think about education? Like, how are we going to educate our kids differently, or how will college be reinvented? Like, there are all these questions that arise in terms of how do we restructure society in the future that I don't think anybody has an answer to. And yeah, the problem of increased inequality is something that more people should be thinking about, because there is a huge chance that we're gonna, miss onto something and end up with a society in which we don't handle this properly. It's just so new to humanity to think about higher lifespans that I don't think we can predict um, all the problems, but we can do much better than we're doing right now, which is basically, I don't know anybody personally working on this problem, like very explicitly. So yeah, if anybody here in this group wants to talk about this, definitely also let me know because I'm curious about working on this problem.
Hey, in context with the previous discussed topic, cellular biology, what are the roles of antioxidants in it, and how do they significantly impact on health?
Could you please repeat that because there's a bit of background noise, or type it in the chat? Just because I'm not sure I understood it properly.
I'm talking about antioxidant role in cellular biology and its significant impact on health.
Um,
Is it audible?
could you please type it in the chat?
Okay, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Should I continue with another question in the meantime?
No, no, I'll ask you one more, and then we'll have his question, and then we'll just end the session. Okay? So, does delaying aging or making someone live long isn't against nature? This is question from Anish Patak.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a perception of it's unnatural to live longer. And I do think there are some, for example, religious arguments against why living longer in terms of if, you know, I'm obviously not assuming anybody's religion is chat. I'm personally atheist, so it's even a bit tougher to relate to people of other beliefs. But I just know that I hear, for example, up in Europe, so a bunch of my friends are Christian, and talk about how, if God intended for us to live to a certain age, or if this is the way um, that we live, or like this is the way that evolution wanted us to be, then why push against this sort of natural limitation of the human body? And there are definitely other arguments, like, you may not want to live longer. There are so many other things that would be telling you, like, I may have a good time living up to 70 or 80 years old. I would say that there are definitely subjective perceptions of why live longer or why not live longer. um there's definitely kind of, my personal take is everybody should believe what they want to believe. If this just seems unnatural to you, then that's just something that I would accept as such. Personally, I see aging as being unnatural. There's just my belief of um it's only something that happens to us biologically, and we can revert with technology that we're currently developing. I don't say that we have something right now. Longevity biotech is so nascent that we don't have a lot of technologies that we could apply to ourselves right now. All those drugs and therapies that I mentioned earlier are all in the stage of development. We don't have a bunch of things going on in longevity biotech. Um, but I still do have the hopes that, biology is just that. It's just, for me personally, and this might seem maybe a bit reductionist, but for me, it's just the sort of meat suit that keeps my consciousness alive. I would say that for me, biology is just a way of keeping who I am alive, but it's something natural to want to live longer because I want to experience more. I want to experience the world more. Um, I just don't, yeah, I just don't personally see the unnaturality argument as strongly to go uh, to go against it necessarily. But I'm super happy to talk about like the philosophical aspect of longevity as well. Although I feel like I'm maybe a bit biased because once you start working in a space, and I've been in longevity for like 5 years now, you start having your own blind spots, and maybe this is one of them. Being surrounded by people who constantly talk about longevity as being the natural thing to do, I'm also afraid of not properly hearing out the people who might have pertinent points, but I don't hear the perspectives of as often. So yeah, so I really do appreciate philosophical questions, by the way. They really make me think outside of the normal longevity biotech circles that tend to be a bit more maximalist than an average average population that I would otherwise talk to.